תודה לאורי. אנחנו חוזרים לפאנל האחרון במסגרת היום, ששמו תקווה ישראלית, האם דרושה אמנה חברתית חדשה. מי שיישא את הרצאת הפתיחה, זו זכות עבורי להזמין אותו, חבר קרוב שלי, סר רונלד כהן. שב עוד רגע אחד. אין לי די זמן כדי לתאר את כל עלילותיו של רונלד כהן. רונלד כהן הוא יזם, הוגה וחדשן חברתי וכלכלי, בעל שם עולמי ורשימה ארוכה של תארים וכיבודים. זכות עבורנו שהוא הסכים להצטרף לוועדה האקדמית של מרכז רובינשטיין. רונלד כהן הוא בוגר בהצטיינות של אוניברסיטאות אוקספורד והרווארד. כבר באמצע שנות ה-20 שלו הוא הקים קרן הון סיכון חדשנית בשם אייפקס פרטנרס, שהפכה עם השנים להיות אחת הקרנות המצליחות והידועות בעולם. ואז קרה לו איזה נס קטן. כשהוא הקים את אייפקס הוא היה צעיר בשנות ה-20 שלו, והוא חשב שהשותפים צריכים לפרוש בגיל המופלג של 60. וכשהוא הגיע לגיל הזה, אז כל שותפיו הפצירו בו להישאר, אבל הוא היה הראשון לקיים את מה שכתוב בתקנון של אייפקס ופרש, והתחיל קריירה שנייה, שאני חושב שהיא תאפיל אף על הקריירה הראשונה שלו. רונלד כהן נחשב היום אבי השקעות האימפקט. דהיינו, השקעות שמתחשבות לא רק במרכיבים המסורתיים של ההשקעה, דהיינו תשואה וסיכון, אלא גם בערך המוסף שלה, בערך הכלכלי, בערך החברתי ובערך הסביבתי של ההשקעות. הוא ב-15 השנים האחרונות עשה צעדים רבים והצעיד את השקעות האימפקט למרכז הבמה, כתב ספר חשוב בנושא האימפקט. ב-25 שנים האחרונות הוא מתגורר בישראל ולוקח חלק פעיל בחיים הישראלים. אני מזמין את סר רונלד כהן.
תודה רבה, דורי, פרופסור רובינשטיין, אורי רייכמן, ליאב, אסף. Your timing is impeccable. To have created a center for constitutional challenges a few months before the constitutional challenge is unbelievable timing. And I want to try to bring with the august people that we have speaking today, Avigdor Lieberman, Efrat Reitan, and Mansour Abbas, to give a slightly different perspective than the one I heard this morning about the problems that we say. אני יכול לדבר עברית, אבל לא כמו שאני מדבר אנגלית, אז אם אתם מרשימים לי, אני אדבר באנגלית. זה בסדר? Who votes in favor? Okay, תודה רבה. תודה רבה. So, I spoke in August, it seems like such a long time ago, at the World Zionist Congress in Basel. And I said then that what Israel had achieved was nothing short of miraculous. Miraculous. In the space of less than 75 years, to have become a major military power that can defend itself, the leading power in the Middle East, and at the same time, a leading economy with a very powerful engine in high tech. And that Herzl would have been very proud of us, because in his vision for a modern state, Herzl anticipated technology. It's interesting that Herzl lived at a time when you had, in the space of 25 years, huge technological change. The discovery of electricity, the invention of the radio, the invention of the telephone, the invention of the motor car, the invention of the aeroplane. So it's not surprising that he thought that the Jewish people would be able to contribute to the world through their technological prowess. And he proved to be right. But that if he looked at the society which he had described in the Jewish State and Alt Neuland, a tolerant society, a society where all its citizens have the same rights, where they contribute to one another, he would have said, this is the next challenge for the state of Israel. The challenge is an economic and social one. Let's see what we've achieved economically and socially as we've concentrated on defending ourselves and providing an economy that can sustain our growing population. If we look today, we've made it into the middle of the OECD countries in terms of per capita income. But if you analyze more carefully what's been happening, 60% of children in the Haredi and Arab community live on the poverty line. 45% of families in both these sectors live on the poverty line. We spend a third less on the education of children in both these communities than we do in the Jewish community. If we look at the Haredi community, it's become a closed community where education in liberal arts, including democracy, is inexistent. Do you know how many members of the Haredi community participate in university getting a first degree? 1,500. 1,500 out of 1.2 million people. And if we look at the Arab community, it shows a completely different picture. Our Arab citizens have gone from representing 10% of undergraduate students in 2010 today to representing 18.5%. As a total, our Arab citizens represent 22% of the population. We see an increase in employment in both sectors. We see Haredi women now, 68% of them working versus 83% in the secular part of our society. And within the Arab community, we see 32% of women now working, from a much lower number a long time ago. And so we begin to realize that the state of Israel hasn't really worried about the society it's been building. We've devoted our resources, not enough of them. We only spend 20% or so, 21% of our gross national product a year as a government on services. It compares with 35% in the United States and 45% in Germany and 55% in countries like the Nordic countries. We have not invested in creating our society, and this is the price we're paying now. Because capitalism and democracy go hand in hand. Few people realize this. Both capitalism and democracy are based on personal freedom. Democracy, the freedom to live your life within the law. And in business, the freedom to compete within the law. But where capitalism and democracy clash is in the distribution of the economic gain. And what we have seen in Israel and across the world is a distribution that has been challenged by technology, which has brought the opportunity for great wealth to those who are educated and can participate in technology and finance, who have made fortunes on a scale that historically has not been achieved before, and half the population that works in services and in traditional industries that has seen its income in real terms stagnate for 10 to 20 years. So is it surprising then that we see people saying, what is democracy? It's a word. It doesn't work for me. Give me a protector. Give me a dictator, a strong person, a strong leader who will defend my interests. I would much rather have that. And so all this talk of the Supreme Court is overshadowed by frustrations about inequality. We may not see them expressed in our daily press, but believe me, when somebody living in the periphery or in the Haredi sector or in the Arab sector sees the fortunes that are being created in high tech and see their own life stagnating, it creates huge frustration. Benjamin Disraeli, in the middle of the 19th century, made a famous speech at the time, similar time, when the Industrial Revolution had led to huge wealth being created, while huge swathes of the population were left behind, a speech entitled Two Nations. Two nations that don't know each other, don't talk to one another, and don't really relate to one another. We find ourselves in Israel with 4 nations in one. So what is the way forward? I want to be practical. Our future governments have to address these inequalities. If you want to strengthen democracy, you have to strengthen social equality and economic equality. You have to spread equality of opportunity evenly across every population. You can't favor settler movements by giving them tax incentives and spending nearly $200 billion in the settlement enterprise, while giving lesser incentives to Jews and Arabs living in the periphery. But that's where our politics have taken us. And so now we have to reverse the direction, and we have to put real resources in investing heavily in education on an equal basis or on a superior basis for those populations that have been left behind educationally. Because education is the ladder to social mobility. At the same time, we have to invest heavily in the infrastructure of our different populations. We have to give people the sense that they are sharing in the prosperity which tech has created here in Israel, that they are not left behind by educational elites which have enriched themselves. And so when we begin to think of the world after this crisis, which, viewing it from outside, I am totally confident that we will overcome. I'm totally confident that we will make it through this crisis with a vindication of democracy, and I agree with Uri Reichman that we have to take the opportunity to entrench democracy once and for all, so the rules of the game are clear. But if we only do that, if we only deal with the political dimension of the social conflict that we see today, we will be dealing with the symptom. We will be dealing with the fact that these economic disadvantages create fertile ground for demagogical politicians who take advantage of populism in order to benefit their own ends. So we need to have a different type of budget. We have a former Minister of Finance here. We need to have a different type of budget. We need to use the modern tools of impact investment now. outcomes budgets for government, not how much I'm spending for education in the Haredi or in the Arab or in the periphery or in any other sector, but what outcomes I have to achieve in each of these sectors, how many students I want to see graduating, and measure these achievements. And we can use outside capital. It doesn't need to come from our budgets. Our budgets can afford it. We can use outside capital to come in alongside government, as we are doing already, and teach Bedouin students maths in Rahat, and have the government pay for it once they have achieved the attainment level we require. Or prevent our population from going from being pre-diabetic to being diabetic. Or preventing half our students at Haifa University from dropping out of computer studies because their schools haven't prepared them well enough in the periphery, or because they don't speak good enough Hebrew coming from the Arab community. We need outcomes budgets, we need impact investment, and we need the will now to invest in our society as we invested in our army and our economy. If we wish it, it won't be a dream. Thank you.
תודה לסר רונלד על הנאום מלא ההשראה הזה.